Something about the new girl felt wrong, not in a bad way, just different. Her name was Zira, and she joined school on a rainy Tuesday. She didn't smile much, but when she did, it was never at the right time. She laughed when no one else did, and stayed silent when everyone else was laughing. Jake was the first to notice. Wasn't the smartest kid in school, but he paid attention, especially to people who didn't fit in. Zero definitely didn't fit in. She wore gloves every day, even in summer, thick black ones that went up to her elbows. When someone asked her why, she simply said, "My skin is sensitive," and laughed. But the laugh felt off, like she had practiced it, like it wasn't hers. During lunch, she sat alone and drew strange symbols in her notebook. One day, Jake peeked over her shoulder. The symbols weren't letters or numbers. They looked like maps or maybe circuits. When she noticed him looking, she closed the book quickly and gave him a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Do you think I'm funny?" she asked. Jake blinked, confused. "What?" "Never mind," she said, then turned away. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. Something was bothering him. It wasn't just the gloves or the weird laugh or the strange drawings. It was her eyes. He had seen them change color once, just for a second, when the lights flickered in the hallway. From brown to glowing blue, no contact lenses could do. That? Not like that? The next day, he decided to follow her after school. She usually walked alone. Down a quiet street that led to the woods, Jake kept a safe distance, hiding behind trees and fences. She didn't look back even once. Zira walked deep into the forest, further than anyone from school ever went. She stopped at a clearing, checked her watch, then pressed something on it. Suddenly, a soft humming sound filled the air. A floating blue screen appeared in front of her like a hologram. Us. Jake's eyes widened. What was that thing? Zero started talking to it in a language Jake couldn't understand. It wasn't any human language, that much he was sure of. And then she laughed loud and sharp, but again, at nothing. It sent a chill down Jake's spine. He stepped on a branch. Crack. Zero froze, and the hologram vanished. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice calm but alert. Jake tried to stay quiet, but he knew he'd been caught. He stepped out from behind the tree. "It's me, Jake," he said, raising his hands. "I didn't mean to spy. I was just curious." Zira didn't smile this time. She looked at him carefully, then slowly walked toward him. "You saw it, didn't you?" Jake nodded. "The screen, the language, everything," she sighed, and looked up at the darkening sky. "Well," she said, "no point hiding anymore." She pulled off her gloves. Jake gasped. Her skin wasn't skin. Not really. It was smooth and metallic, with glowing blue lines running across it like a circuit board. She held up her hand, and her fingers split into smaller parts, then joined back together. "Don't worry," she said. "I'm not here to hurt anyone." Jake took a step back, unsure. "You're an alien?" She smiled again. "Technically, yes, but I prefer the term off-world visitor." Jake didn't know what to say. This was crazy. This was science fiction, but it was real. "And you say I'm not funny? Human?" Always thought that joke would kill. Jake stared at her, still in shock. She tilted her head and added, "You're not going to scream, are you? Or run? That would be very disappointing." Jake shook his head slowly. "No, I'm not going to run." Zira smiled, and for the first time, it felt real. "Good," she said, "because now that you know, I could use your help." Jake opened his mouth to ask what she meant, but before he could speak, a soft beep came from her wrist. Her eyes flashed blue again, and she turned to look at the sky. "We have to go," she said. "Now go where?" Jake asked. "Someplace safe," Zira answered, pulling her gloves back on. "They're coming." "Who's they?" She paused and looked him in the eye. "Not everyone from my planet likes humans." And with that, she grabbed his hand, and they ran into the forest, into the night. Into something Jake never imagined was real, but it was. It was very real, and this was only the beginning. Asterisk. The forest was silent, too silent. Even the wind had stopped moving the leaves. Jake ran behind Zira, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. She moved like she knew every root, every rock, every shadow. Jake didn't know where they were going, only that something was coming, and it wasn't human. They finally stopped. At a hidden cave covered by thick vines, Zira waved her hand in front of the rock wall. A part of it shimmered, then melted away like fog. Behind it was a metal door glowing faint blue. Jake couldn't believe his eyes. A spaceship? He whispered. Not quite, she said, pulling him inside. It's an emergency pod. Nothing fancy, but it hides well. Inside, the space was cold and quiet. The walls were smooth metal, covered in alien symbols. Screens flickered, and strange. Soft music played from somewhere. It was like stepping into another world. Jake looked at Zira, really looked at her. Why are you here? He asked. Why Earth? Zira sat on a floating chair and stared at one of the screens. She didn't answer right away then. She said, Earth is a testing ground. Jake blinked. For what? For something big? She said, something my people don't understand. She turned to face him, her glowing eyes, serious, emotion, laughter, kindness, chaos. You humans are full of strange energy? Jake frowned. That doesn't sound like a reason to send scouts. It is, she said, especially when your laughter can be weaponized. Jake laughed awkwardly. You're joking, right? Zira didn't laugh. I told a joke once back home, she said softly. It started a riot. Jake didn't know if she was serious, but he was too tired to argue. His head spun with questions. What happens now? Zira looked at him. Now you go home? Jake's heart dropped. What? After everything I saw, I'm just supposed to forget it? Zira stood up and walked closer to him. Her face was calm, but her voice was firm. You tell no one, she said. Not your parents, not your friends. If you do, we're both dead. Jake swallowed hard. You're serious? I'm always serious, she said, then smiled, except when I'm not, suddenly. A soft chime rang from the wall. Zira moved quickly, tapping a panel. A voice spoke in a language Jake didn't understand, fast and sharp, Zira's. Face turned pale. They found us, she whispered. Jake backed away. Wait, who? The people from your planet. Zira nodded slowly. They don't like what I'm doing here. What are you doing here? She hesitated, then said, saving you, before they turn your world into a laughing prison. Jake stared at her. You're not making any sense. I know, she said. It's a long story. But right now we have a problem. Just then. Jake's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, no signal. Then it lit up again. Block number, incoming call. He looked at Zira and answered. A cold voice spoke. We know what you saw, Jake. Jake's blood turned to ice. Who is this? Don't trust the girl, the voice said. She's dangerous. The call ended. Jake looked up, his hand shaking. Zira, someone just called me. She nodded. They always call. Jake stepped back. Are you really the good one in this story? Zira didn't move. You have to decide that for yourself, she said. But whatever you choose, it won't matter if we don't leave now. Suddenly the cave shook, dust falling from the ceiling. A loud buzzing noise came from above like a swarm of bees, but metallic. Zira grabbed a small device from the wall, a cube that changed shape in her hands. She tossed Jake a strange helmet. Put it on, and whatever you do, don't laugh. Jake frowned. Why? Because that's how they find you, she said, through sound, through humor. Jake's voice cracked. This is insane. No, Zira said, her eyes glowing again. This is war. The cave door began to dissolve again, this time. From the outside, Zira looked at Jake one last time. Still think I'm not funny? Human? Then the light swallowed them both. Jake woke up on the cold floor of his garage. His heart was racing, and his clothes were covered in dust and leaves. For a moment, he didn't remember anything. Then he saw her, sitting cross-legged on top of his dad's old toolbox. Zira, good morning, sleepy human, she said, tossing him a bottle of water. Jake sat up slowly. What happened? The cave, those voices, the light. You passed out, Zira replied casually. Too much excitement for one night. Jake looked around, confused. How did we get here? I teleported us, she said, as if it was no big deal. Don't worry. Your brain only took minor damage. Jake blinked. What? Kidding, she added, with a strange grin. Mostly Jake stood up, rubbing his head. You said they found us. Zero nodded, her face now serious. Yes, they did. Jake felt a chill, and they're still looking. Zero looked him in the eye. Yes, and that's why I need you to hide me. Jake laughed nervously. You want me to hide an alien in my house? Zero looked around the dusty garage. This place is more advanced than most planets I've visited. Jake sighed. My mom barely lets me keep snacks in here. How am I supposed to hide a living alien? Zero stood up and walked to the garage door. They're called the Echoes, she said quietly. That's who's chasing me, Jake frowned. What are they? Failed experiments, she said. Creatures who forgot who they were, and now steal what others are. She turned to face him. They can copy anything, your face, your voice, your memories. Jake shivered. So how do we fight that? We don't, Zero replied. We hide until I figure out how to shut them down. Just then, Jake's phone buzzed again. He picked it up. One new voicemail. He hit play. It was his mom's voice, but wrong. Too slow, too smooth, Jakey. I'm home early today, it said. Come outside. I want to show you something. Zero's eyes widened. That's not your mom? Jake dropped the phone. They can copy voices too? Zero nodded. They're already here. Jake rushed to the small window and peeked outside. His mom's car was in the driveway, but she wasn't moving, just standing there, staring at the house. Her smile was too wide to still, Zero whispered. If they get inside, we're finished. Jake turned to her, panicking. What do we do? She handed him a tiny silver disc, no bigger than a coin. Put this under your tongue. Jake hesitated. What is it? Signal blocker, she said. They can't mimic you if they can't hear your thoughts. Jake swallowed hard and obeyed. Outside, the figure began to knock. Once, twice. Then the door creaked open on its own. Jake gasped. She has a key. That's not her anymore, Zero whispered, pulling Jake behind a stack of old paint cans. They held their breath as the echo of his mother stepped into the garage. Her footsteps were too smooth, like she was gliding. She paused in the middle of the room and spoke again. Jakey, she said, her voice sweet but hollow. I made your favorite. Jake squeezed his eyes shut. That voice didn't belong to his mom. It was wearing her skin, but not her soul suddenly. Zira tapped her wristband, and a sharp pulse of blue light flashed across the garage. The figure froze, then let out a distorted scream. Its body flickered like a broken screen, and then it vanished into smoke. Jake fell to the floor, breathing heavily. Zira sat beside him, calm again. Echo shadows can't survive pure emotion. She said. Jake stared at her. You said you were just a scout. I lied, Zira said with a shrug. I was sent to destroy them. Jake looked at her, 100 questions on his lips, but Zira stood and brushed dust off her jacket. I'll explain more later, she said. Right now I need snacks and internet. Jake stared at her, dumbfounded. You just fried a monster, and now you want Wi-Fi and chips? Zero smiled. Even galaxy defenders need brain fuel. As she walked into the house like she belonged there, Jake sat alone for a moment. He looked at the spot where the echo had stood. Nothing was left, not even a shadow. His world had changed, and somehow he was okay with that. But one thing was clear. This girl wasn't just not quite human. She was something much more, and now she was his problem too. Asterisk the next morning. 2 black cars parked outside Jake's house. No sirens, no flashing lights, just silence. 2 men in suits stepped out, tall and clean, like they walked out of a movie. They wore dark glasses, shiny shoes, and smiled way too much. The kind of smile that said, I know everything, and I like watching you squirm. Jake peeked through the window and felt his stomach twist. Who are they? He asked, his voice low. Zira didn't answer. She was already backing away from the window. Zira. They're not human, she whispered, but they want you to think they are. Ooh. The doorbell rang, but it didn't ding. It laughed, a soft, fake chuckle echoed through the hallway like a broken toy. Jake's skin crawled. That's not normal, he muttered. Nothing about them is, Zira said, reaching for her wristband. Jake looked at her. I thought you said the echoes were shadows. They are. she said. These are worse outside. The agents waited patiently, still smiling. One of them leaned closer to the doorbell and whispered, "Knock, knock." The door creaked open by itself. Jake's dad stepped forward, yawning. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The taller agent tilted his head and said, "Yes, sir. We're just doing a neighborhood laugh check, excuse me." Jake's dad blinked. The second agent pulled out a card. But it was blank, completely white, except when the light hit it. And then strange alien symbols shimmered. Jake's dad rubbed his eyes. I don't understand." The first agent laughed. "Oh, you will," Jake whispered from behind the wall. "They're doing something to him." Zira nodded. "They're feeding him noise." Jake peeked again. His dad started laughing, slowly at first, then louder. And louder, it didn't sound like him anymore. It sounded like someone trapped inside his own body, laughing because he couldn't scream. Zira pulled Jake back. "We have to go." "Go where?" "They're in the house." Isira looked at the air vent above them. Plan B. The next 5 minutes were crawling, literally. Zira and Jake squeezed through narrow vents, every sound magnified. Below them, they could still hear laughter, but now it was coming from both agents and his dad. One voice, 3 mouths, one joke. And no one knew what was funny. They reached the basement. Zira opened a hidden panel behind an old shelf. Inside was a small sphere, floating and humming quietly. "This will block their echo field," she said. "Then what?" Jake asked, "Do we fight them?" Zira looked at him and smiled. "No," she said. "We prank them." Jake blinked. "What?" Zira tapped the sphere, and a strange buzzing sound filled the room. Then she pulled out a small device. It looked like a toy rubber chicken. Jake stared at it, confused. "Are you serious?" "I told you," she said. "Where I come from, humor is power." The agents stepped into the basement, heads tilted, grinning too wide. Now, one said. "Why so serious?" Zira stepped forward, holding the rubber chicken like it was a sword. "You want to laugh?" She said. "Here's one you'll never forget." She squeezed it, and it let out the weirdest, loudest, most broken squawk Jake had ever heard. It echoed like a siren, bouncing off the walls, twisting the air. The agents staggered, covering. Their ears, their suits flickered, their faces melted like wet paint. Revealing shifting static underneath, they let out high-pitched giggles that turned into screams. Then pop, they vanished. Silence returned. Jake stared at the rubber chicken. In Zira's hand, "That's your weapon." "Not mine," she said. "It was invented by a comedian rebel on my planet." Jake sat down, stunned. "I'm losing my mind." "No," Zira said, sitting beside him. "You're finally understanding." Jake looked up. "What were those?" "Agents. They're called mimics," she said. "Half echo, half program. Why are they smiling all the time?" "Because they're empty inside." They both sat quietly for a moment, the weight of everything sinking in. Then Jake looked at her and asked, "So, what now?" Zira stood, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain aside. Outside, the sky was darker than usual. A soft rumble echoed across the clouds. "They know I'm not alone anymore," she said, "and that changes everything." She turned to him, eyes glowing softly. "From now on, Jake, we don't run." Jake nodded. "All right," Zira smiled. "Next time we make them laugh." Jake never thought laughter could feel heavy, but tonight it was a weight pressing on his chest. He sat on the rooftop with Zira, watching the stars flicker strangely. They weren't twinkling like before, they were pulsing, like warning lights. Zira held a small crystal cube in her hand. Inside it, shapes moved like smoke trapped in glass. "This," she said quietly, "is a punchline bomb." Jake blinked. "A what?" Zira looked at him, her eyes glowing a soft violet, a joke so powerful. "It can rewrite brainwaves." Jake leaned back. "You're telling me a joke can destroy a planet?" She nodded. "It doesn't destroy it," she said. "It changes it, one mind at a time." She placed the cube on the roof tiles inside. "My people built this weapon by accident," she explained. "They wanted to make laughter stronger, to end wars with joy, to heal with humor." Jake looked at the cube again. "So what went wrong?" Zira's voice lowered. "They forgot that not everyone laughs for the same reason." She paused, staring at the moon. Some laughed to share, she said. Others laughed to control. Jake swallowed hard, and the mimics. They want to release the punchline, she said, as a global broadcast. One laugh shared across every screen. Every speaker, every mind. Jake tried to imagine it. A world laughing without knowing why. Forever smiling, never thinking. He shivered. When? He asked. Zira tapped her wristband. Tomorrow night, she said. They're using Earth's largest comedy event as a delivery system. Jake raised an eyebrow. You mean the world's funniest humans live show? She nodded, the moment the winning joke is played. It won't be a joke. Jake stood up, nervous energy buzzing in his chest. Then we stopped the show. Zero stood beside him. No, she said. We hijack it. Jake frowned. What? You're going to write a new joke? She said. Handing him a glowing pen, Jake stared at it. I'm not a comedian, exactly. Zira smiled. You're unpredictable. Jake paced the rooftop. This is insane, yes, Zira said. But so is turning Earth into a laughing prison. He turned back to her. If I mess this up, you won't, she interrupted. Because I'll be there and because you're human. Jake looked at her. What does that mean? Zira knelt down beside the cube. Your species can turn pain into punchlines. She said softly, that's your gift. Jake didn't answer, but deep inside, something clicked. The next morning, Jake skipped school. He stayed locked in his room, writing, deleting, writing again. Zira helped him understand how alien humor worked, how laughter triggered brainwaves. She showed him samples of dangerous jokes one-liners that caused dizziness, puns that erased memory, riddles that created echo feedback. Jake stared at the blinking cursor on his screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. What if I make people laugh too hard? He asked. Zira looked up from the floor, where she was reprogramming a drone. Then we win, she said, because real laughter makes you free. As night fell, they put the plan into action. Zira and Jake arrived at the comedy show disguised. As tech crew, the arena was packed. Millions were watching live online, backstage. Screens flickered as performers prepared, but in the control room, the mimics were already in place. Zira pointed toward the main server. That's where they'll upload the punchline bomb. Jake pulled the joke he had written from his jacket. One line, one chance, handwritten on a simple piece of paper. Zira looked at it and smiled. This might actually work. Just before the final act, Zira released a pulse that knocked out the mimic operators. Jake ran to the microphone, heart racing, hands shaking. He looked out into the blinding lights, into the sea of faces, into the eyes of a world about to be changed. And he spoke, why did the galaxy break up with the sun? He paused, because it needed space. A beat of silence, then laughter. Real, imperfect. Unstoppable laughter, not a brainwashing wave, not a forced signal, but honest laughter from people being. People, Zira watched from the shadows, her face calm. The punchline bomb short-circuited from the emotional feedback. Its glow faded, the cube cracked, and then it shattered, the mimics sensing the failure. Began to glitch and vanish, one by one. They disappeared like bad dreams at sunrise. Backstage, Jake walked down, breathless. Zira met him at the exit. Not bad, she said. Jake smiled. I told you I wasn't funny. Zira raised an eyebrow. Funny enough to save Earth, asterisk, there's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. Feels like something is hiding just behind the sound. Waiting, Jake sat alone in the school library. Lights dim, air too cold. It had been 2 days since he stopped the punchline bomb, 2 days since the world almost laughed itself into madness. But now, something felt wrong again. Zira had disappeared. She left without a message. No signal, no hologram, not even a joke. The last thing she said was, "Don't trust the silence." Then she was gone. Jake tapped his pencil on the table, staring. At the empty seat across from him, he had a feeling she wasn't just hiding. She was in trouble. Suddenly the lights flickered, and the library screen lit up on its own. Static danced across it. Then a voice came through, soft, glitchy. "Familiar, Jake," it whispered. "They found me." Jake's chest tightened. 0. The screen cleared for 1 second, just long enough to see her face. Bruised and flickering like a damaged file. They're learning, she said, her voice fading. They can feel now. Then the screen shattered from the inside. Jake stood up. Heart pounding, he had to find her. Later that night, he snuck out. He was carrying only two things, a flashlight and a recording of his school talent show. Why the recording? Because it had Zira's last test on it, a joke that worked like a signal disruptor. Laughter isn't a weapon, she once told him. It's a flashlight in the dark. Now he was in the dark, literally. He followed a trail of corrupted, sound-distorted echoes only Zira's wristband could leave. It led him into the old train tunnels beneath the city. Every step deeper felt like a memory fading. The walls began to hum, not with machinery, but with whispers. Voices repeating the same word, laugh, over and over, like a broken prayer. At the end of the tunnel, Jake saw a faint blue light, and there she was, Zira, suspended in midair. Trapped inside a sphere of energy, her eyes were closed, her body limp. Surrounding her were the new mimics. They looked human. But their faces changed every few seconds, like they were trying on emotions like clothes. One of them stepped forward. It had Jake's face. "Hello, me," it said with a crooked smile. "Do you know what's really funny?" Jake raised the recorder and played the joke. Why did the alien break up with Earth? Because Earth needed space. The echo voices hissed, the air warped, and the sphere around Zero cracked. The mimics screamed not in pain, but in confusion. They couldn't handle honest laughter. Jake stepped closer. "Real humor," he said, "isn't just noise." He played the second clip, Zira's voice, telling a story about how she once misunderstood sarcasm and blew up a vending machine. It was her favorite joke. She called it the snack attack. The laughter on the tape filled the tunnel, and the mimics froze, their faces twisted into unfamiliar emotions. Some began crying, others started laughing. Real laughter for the first time. Then they began to dissolve gently. Like mist and morning light, the sphere broke. "Ah!" And Zira dropped to the ground. Jake rushed to her side. She opened one eye, weak but smirking. "Took you long enough, human?" Jake helped her up. "You. All right. Just scrambled," she said, "like alien eggs." He laughed through the tears building in his eyes. "I thought I lost you." She looked at him, serious for a moment. "You almost did," she said. "They tried something new feelings, Jake." Looked around and it didn't work. Zero shook her head. "No, it almost worked," she said, "and next time, it might." Jake helped her out of the tunnel, her weight light against his shoulder. Above ground, the stars were quiet again, but not peaceful, just watching. Back at the house, she sat beside him on the porch. They didn't say much. Sometimes quiet was good, when it wasn't fake. Then Zira broke the silence with a whisper. "I don't want to go back." Jake turned to her. "Then don't," he said. "Stay here." Zira looked at him, eyes soft. "Even if I'm not human." Jake smiled. "Especially because you're not." She nodded slowly, then leaned back and said, "You know, this is the most serious I've ever been." Jake smirked. "Should I be worried?" Zira grinned, terrified. The stars were blinking out one by one, as if someone far away was flipping switches across the sky. Jake stood on the school roof, watching it happen. I had seen alien tech, fought echo creatures, and told the joke that saved Earth. But this was different. This felt like a goodbye. Zero was next to him, silent. Her eyes brighter than usual. "They're calling me back," she said softly. Jake nodded without speaking. He already knew. He had known since the moment her signal. Pulse went silent this morning. "They're scared," she added, "not of humans, but of what I've become around you." Jake looked at her. "And what have you become?" She smiled, but her hands were shaking, louder. The air shimmered above them. A tear opened in the sky wide and glowing like an eye. Ships hovered in the clouds, shaped like spirals, silent but watching. "They want to erase me," Zira said, "reset my memory, bring me home clean." Jake clenched his fists. "No," he said, "not after everything." Zero looked at him. "There's one last thing I can do," she said, "but it might end me." She reached into her jacket and pulled out something small and silver, a cube, cracked and pulsing with slow light. "The anti-punchline," she whispered. Jake frowned. "What does it do?" She hesitated, then answered, "It makes them feel what we feel, but all at once." Jake's eyes widened. "Isn't that dangerous?" "For them?" she asked. "Yes." The sky trembled. The ships began to hum, preparing to beam her up. Zira looked at Jake, calm and certain. "They think laughter is noise," she said. "Let's show them its truth." She tapped the cube, and the pulse exploded upward. No blast. No flame, just a wave of realness. Memories, mistakes, jokes, heartbreaks, inside jokes, awful puns, birthday cakes, arguments, handshakes. Everything human, everything loud. The alien ships twitched, then shimmered. One by one, they vanished. Not destroyed, but overloaded. They weren't built to feel. They only knew how to watch, never how to laugh. Jake turned to Zira. She was still there, glowing, standing in the middle of it all. Her body flickered, but her smile stayed there. "Gone," he said, breathless. She nodded. "But I don't know how long I'll stay solid." She was fading, pixel by pixel. Her voice was glitching. "But hey, human," she whispered. "Was I funny?" Jake stepped forward, his eyes wet but smiling. "You were weird, awkward, loud, confusing." Zira raised an eyebrow. Jake grinned. "And the funniest person I've ever met." Zira chuckled, a small, broken sound. Then she looked up, as if listening to something only she could hear. Permission denied. She whispered to the sky, then turned to Jake. "Because I've already found my punchline." She stepped toward him. And for 1 second, one real second, she was whole, alive, present. She poked him in the chest and said, "And you say I'm not funny, human?" Then she vanished. Not in a flash, not with sound, just gone like a perfect joke at the end of a story. Jake stood alone, but not empty. Because sometimes the loudest laugh is the one you carry in silence, and somewhere far beyond Earth. The broken joke made the universe feel something real for the very first time.